Yeah, 1 2 1 2. You know how we do with your boy BQ Impact Lounge with your hard to kill results recap and my thoughts on the pay per view. I would have loved to do this last night, but for someone who wakes up every day for work at 3:15 in the morning, when 10 o'clock hits, that's like pretty freaking late for me. So I wasn't able to do it after. I usually love to live stream and just review the pay-per-view right after, but that's just not that was not going to happen. You would have got some half asleep dude talking about some matches that you know were really really good, but sometimes when you talk right after the show, you either don't appreciate some of the matches or you don't appreciate them enough, so um got to sleep on it, and think about it a little bit more as I woke up this morning. So I'm going to give you quick thoughts. It's always a little harder for me to review a pay-per-view because it's so wrestling centric rather than doing an episode of Impact that there's storylines going on and there's segments, and things are building towards something. So it's always a little bit easier to talk about an episode rather than a pay-per-view itself. But let's jump into this. So Hard to Kill. I said when I was doing my previous show that it's typically my favorite pay-per-view of the year. I know it's not it's only been around a few years, but it seems to be the one that they go hardest on. That was just the case. Or that's what it's been the case. And with this one here, I'm gonna. Many of you will probably disagree with me. It took me a little while to get into it. The first few matches, I really was not getting really excited, and that includes a pre-show. Even though I had good wrestling, but I wasn't getting excited until about the middle of the pay-per-view, and then I started really, really getting into it. There was clearly a lot of people there. There's been pay-per-views in the past where like, oh, we've sold them out, and it's 800 people because they've done some smaller venues. With this one, I was at Bound for Glory 2017 or 18. I don't remember exactly. The one in Chicago, the one that the Impact Diehard said there was 5,000 people at. It was really about 2,500 people. And I feel like there was more at this one. Or I don't know. The setup was much, much different with that one. So, I'm going to say there was definitely a couple thousand people there at a minimum, from what I was able to see. There was considerably a lot of people. And it's so much more enjoyable for us to watch Impact when there's people in the crowd and you just hear the noise and you hear the reactions and you didn't see the same type of energy you might see like at AEW show or something, because there was times where people were in the stands and all that, and you just kind of saw a little bit of hand sitting on the hands a little bit, but for the most part, really engaged crowd. And I'm not gonna bullshit you. I didn't have the volume on super loud because I was watching on my laptop. Because my old lady doesn't like Impact. And I've mentioned that before too. Like she'll watch AEW with me, but she does not like Impact. And it's not a diss on the company, but the way that I always explain it is like she represents the casual wrestling fan, and the casual fan is going to see the big budget show and be like, okay, I have interest in this, and then see the one that it's all dark and it looks like there's 10 people because of the way they just filled the entrance ramp, so she can't really get into it. So I kind of had to have it on my laptop while she was watching TV next to me. So I didn't really listen to the commentary a whole lot. And but I could tell that, it's an engaged crowd. And again, it's so much easier if the Impact TV show, which we know this isn't going to happen, but if the TV show had that kind of crowd, or at least 1,000 people, I think the show in general would improve so much. But I think in the eye of the wrestling fan, it would too. Because you could like, if they were to do the damn instead of the entrance way, if they were to film the crowd, and you were getting like 1,000 people, let's say, at the TV tapings, and lighting them up and everything, like I really think the company would do so much better in the eyes of the wrestling fan. You know what I mean? Because you want it to look like people give a shit. That's the thing. Like when you're watching a product and it looks like people don't care, like it's hard to care as a viewer and as a fan. So let's get into this though. The knockouts 3-way, 6-man tag, 3-way, whatever. It wasn't a 3-way, 6-man tag. That was Giselle Shaw with Tasha Steele, Savannah Evans against the Death Dolls, that got completely bumped from this show. And I guess it was put on in the pre-show. We didn't see it. I think it happened in that time frame. Like if you're watching on YouTube and you're getting the pre-show, I think it happened before that. And I would imagine it's going to be released for a digital exclusive. I'm sure they're disappointed. I don't know what the reasons were. No one seemed to have a reason for it. But it did get bumped. So that kind of sucks because I had some interest in that. So we'll see what happens when that comes out. But I believe Giselle Shaw's team won. I believe. I think I looked at that before I went to bed. So as I said, this started off slowly for me. It just did. It's not to say that this was a bad show. It just means me as a wrestling fan and what I look for and what I want. It just took a little bit for it to build for me. So a lot of the fans were into this from the jump, and that's awesome. Like if you were, awesome. It just took me a little minute to get there. The only real negative thing I'm going to say on this show is that the camera work was absolutely horrendous. I think it improved a little bit as the night went on, but this was some of the most amateur camera work I have seen on a wrestling show in I don't know how long. I mean, they were missing spots. As a matter of fact, there was there was a spot in one of the later matches. I can't remember. I think it was a thumbtack spot that they completely missed. The camera was sometimes behind the post. Cameraman's faces showed up on screen a couple times. Like one cameraman recorded like the other cameraman. It was really, really close. It was cutting off heads at some point. It was very shaky. Like this was horrible. Now, if you notice around the ring, there wasn't a lot of room, and they kept wrestling out there, especially early on, and there just wasn't room for the cameramen to really move around. So it was, it was on some amateur level that I just was blown away by. I have no explanation for that. It just looked horrible. It was very, very dark, like the episodes of Impact. I mean, there were so many people there, and we couldn't see jack shit. There was a couple times where the camera would show the audience, and you were, damn, there's a lot of people, but it was like you just saw, damn near shadows. It was so dark. I just don't get it. And the Impact Wrestling fans as a whole don't get it, but just horrible. They were doing some quick zooms and stuff like that. It was just bad. It was really, really bad. It took me a while to get used to it. So that's my real negative thing. Negative BQ kicking it off one time. That's my real negative thing about the show. Horrendous camera work. I hope we never see anything like that again. And if you didn't pick up on all that, like kudos to you. Awesome. Good for you. Because for those of us who did, it was bad. So it kicked off with the X Division match. It was the 6-way. And excuse me, I didn't write down the name, so I'm gonna have to go off the top of my head here. I just wrote 6-way in my notes, but we had Mike Jackson, Kushida, the other Japanese fellow, I can't remember his name at the moment, Angels, Delirious, and I don't remember the other dude. Okay, it's Mike Bailey, my bad. So Uemura or whatever. So you guys know me, if you've been watching me for a long time, that these matches aren't real exciting for me. These, putting as many people in a match as possible. But it was a good way to kick off the show. I mean, it's just a pre-show match. So, I'm not going to sit here, oh, they should have done this and this and that. Like, it wasn't part of the pay-per-view. It was just something like fun for the people to do. The Mike Jackson stuff wasn't as bad as I thought. He did do the walking around the ropes thing with Angels. It's a comedy spot. I don't see how any of the wrestlers in that match benefited from him being in it. I don't know why he didn't take the pin at the end, because Sheeta got the victory in this thing. When I did my preview, I actually didn't. I forgot to say who I thought was going to win. I forgot to make my prediction when I was talking about this match, because Sheeta was the one I was fairly certain was going to win. When Impact brings in guys of this level, they're going to win. That we just know that. And because Sheeta's getting a match against Darby Allin for the TNT Championship, so it's like, it kind of sucks because the wrestling world now knows, Kushita's, in the States, because I don't believe he lives in the States. So now he's doing this big match with Darby Allin, but it's like, damn, Impact had him first, and it's kind of off the radar. So, at least he won this thing, and we'll see what happens. I think what was a little disappointing for me, and the reason I kind of didn't care about the match was like, if I'm wrong about this, I'm wrong. But there was like no stakes. This wasn't like a number one contenders match or anything like that. This was just a bunch of people wrestling. And that's why I don't have like a lot of interest in those kind of matches. That's like a video game match, you know, when you just have a stipulation just to have a stipulation, you know, in real life, that's not how wrestling is. So, you know, whatever. We'll see. I'm sure he's going to wrestle for the X Division Championship. I mean, this is Impact. You know, they're going to bring an outside person in. They're going to come in and get a title shot. So we'll see. But it was a good way to kick it off. Those are the type of matches Impact is known for, to get people, you know, really excited and everything. After that, so they bumped Trey Miguel, the X Division title match, Trey Miguel and Black Taurus onto this thing. This was one of the matches that I said was one of the 4 that had the potential to be match of the night, and it was really good. I don't think it took it to the level that I was really expecting it to, but I think that's because it was a pre-show match, and if it was on the actual pay-per-view card, I think it would be something that people were really talking about the next day. And you know, Trey Miguel ultimately wins this thing, and this was the first pretty decent storyline they've been able to do with Black Taurus or Decay in general since they've been this new version of it, this new group, you know. And Black Taurus is continuing to get over with the people rather than just kind of being an attraction. Like, oh yeah, it's Decay, oh it's the guy in the mask, you know. He's starting to really get over with the people. But you know, I think this was, a lot of people were, why is the X Division title match on the pre-show? And I get it. I think in this case, because it was more of a replacement, they, you know, kicked one match off. You know, I see it. You know, seems like it was a last minute type of thing. But I'm also a proponent that with the pre-show match, I mean, you obviously don't want to put the world title on the line, but you want to kind of have some matches that mean something. The example I always bring up is that a year and a half ago, the pre-show matches were Triple XL versus the Deaners, you know? How's that going to get anyone to give a shit about watching? That was like the Bound for Glory one year, I believe. Like, why? How was that going to get people to watch? You know what I mean? So I get it. You put a free match that actually kind of means something on there. You know, I don't know. I think it's a good spot for the Knockouts tag team titles, you know, but maybe they didn't think, obviously the titles weren't on the line with that match, but maybe Impact didn't think that match was going to be good enough to be on there, you know? I don't really know, but Trey Miguel is that guy. But this was really good. It just, I thought it was going to be, you know, one of the matches of the night, and it's hard to say that if it's going to be on the pre-show. So the actual Hard to Kill pay-per-view kicks off at this point, and this is Bully Ray versus Josh Alexander. And maybe I need to watch this match again, because looking on Twitter, I did my best to live tweet and pay attention to Twitter during the pay-per-view. People seem to really like this. I didn't really like it that much. I thought it was really, I don't know, maybe I'm like being Jim Cornette, but like when you're busted open and bleeding in the first match, it's just weird to me, you know? I thought it was a little overbooked. It was very like TNA-ish. I did like Jade coming in and hitting the move, because Jade does wrestle, and you know, I would love to see her be a part of the Knockouts division. And maybe this is going to start getting her there. You know, maybe this is like the first step to that. But it was cool to see her actually go out there, and she almost botched it because she didn't botch it, but they were a little far from the turnbuckles. And Bully Ray, being the veteran he is, was able to get her there. And I don't know. I just didn't think this was as good as expected. And I'm glad it didn't go last. That's all. I'll say that much. I'm glad this wasn't the last match of the show. But I just thought it was a little overbooked. Tommy Dreamer came down, you know, pretending he was going to turn on Josh, which, you know, there were some of the Impact fans that were saying, oh, you know, that they were predicting that he was going to turn on Josh in this whole thing. But he ultimately just kind of turned on Bully Ray. This was like a gangbang of Bully Ray. That's what they were trying to do. His, you know, Hotch and Skyler came down for a little bit. just a little overbooked in my opinion. I didn't think there was. I thought Tommy Dreamer was going to play a much bigger role in this story because he was such a big part of the lead up to it. You guys understand? Follow me to where when he showed up in the match, it just came off as really overbooked rather than like a payoff of the story, you know. And people aren't going to boo Tommy Dreamer. They're not going to put Tommy Dreamer in a heel role. So I was never fully convinced that he was going to turn, on Josh and side with Bully Ray. I saw it coming. I thought it was very, very possible. But I at the same time, I was like, I don't really see them doing that. But there were some awesome spots here. I thought the big splash at the end should have been the finish when Bully was on the table because that was the highest spot, literally, of the show. I mean, of the match. It got the biggest reaction. And, this is one of AEW's biggest problems is that they'll have this huge spot that happens at the very end of the match and the person kicks out. And then out of frustration, the wrestler will put them in a submission move or do their finisher. That's never usually as devastating as the actual previous spot, but it cools down the crowd at that point. It's more of the finish comes off flatter. So I thought when he hit that big splash off the top that should have just been the finish. There's an obsession in wrestling with you got to use your finisher to finish a match. I get it. But I just thought that was so impressive. It got a real reaction from people. And that should have just been it. Like, how is Bully Ray going to kick out of that? That's just, ridiculous. And especially because it's the Full Metal Mayhem, and that's his specialty. It just makes sense him losing after going through a table. But then they turn it and putting into the ankle lock. He's angry at this point. I got to turn him over, submit him. And I just thought it came off really flat at that point because the ankle lock is one of those moves. I'm sure it does hurt, but the tap out never looks good. It's they're always flailing their arms and shit like that. And if you're like really tapping out to something because it hurts, and I know this because I've taken in my military days, my active duty days, classes in this, and I was actually an instructor for a little bit for like very low level of combatives. Like if you're really tapping into something, I mean, it's you are slapping very, very quickly. There's not, your hand is not coming up several inches off the ground, so I don't know. It was a little flat of a finish for me, but I did enjoy Jade being part of it. I thought her kind of getting like a little bit of comeuppance with it was cool, and the way she kind of came through the crowd and everything, it was cool. So again, maybe this is just something that I need to watch again, but I don't think I enjoyed it the way everyone else did. So and I also didn't think the world title was going to change in the opening match of the show. I just didn't see it happening. Then after this, we get Motor City Machine Guns versus Heath and Rhino versus the Bullet Club. Again, this was another in my notes. I just wrote tag team title match, so I don't have to go off the top of my head. I said Heath and Rhino, Bullet Club, Motor City Machine Guns. Okay, I'm going to check the notes here. The comments. Someone's going to let me know. Usually during this, someone give it to me. Who was a tag team? Why am I forgetting? Oh, the major players. Okay, so sorry about that. So yeah, this was just another match here that I saw Jade is fine as hell in the comments. I agree. This was another match here that I didn't like totally care about. I forgot that this was an elimination match when I was previewing the show, and yeah, it was an elimination match. Heath and Rhino went out first, as they should have. And I've been making the prediction that they're done. I think that this is it for them. I could be totally wrong. They might show up on the next episode. They might be here for another 6 months, another year. I don't know. I feel like they're done. I feel like what the hell else do you do with them at this point? They lost a lot of steam. Heath got a little bit of momentum with the Honor No More stuff, and it's completely gone. So, and I think they also signed these guys they signed them at a different time. They had different goals. They had different vision. There was a different mission statement at the time. I think, Heath was actually a signing, believe it or not. I mean, God, during the Slammiversary, several years ago when they were, it was the empty arena and we're gonna, have all these surprises and all that. Like Heath was one of those dudes, so he's been around for a while. I think his contract was just extended because of the injury. But considering that the Good Brothers contract was up, several months ago, I think that was probably the initial end date for Heath. And then Rhino's been around since, Michael Elgin was around. So I just think they're done. And especially with them being the former champions and going out first here, I think they're done. The major players is the other one. I don't know the Matt Cardona, where they're going with that. I keep saying it, they're a missed opportunity. Major players can be a really entertaining part of the show, and they're just not getting there with those guys. But what I said in my prediction show, that this whole 4-team match was just to set up more Motor City Machine Guns versus the Bullet Club going forward. That's all this was. That's all it was about. They obviously didn't want to do it 2-on-2. So this is just a way. It's also a way to get everyone on the card, which they typically try to do at the pay-per-views. So, it was okay. This again, if you're just like tuning in, I was saying that this pay-per-view in general, it took me a while to start getting excited and getting into it. And this was another one that just because I never have interest in these type of matches, I'm just kind of watching it, and I felt like I was just watching an episode of Impact with a big crowd. After this, Frankie Kazarian comes out. And when he came out, I actually thought Christopher Daniels was going to follow him. I thought they were going to, I thought they were like, oh, cool. Frankie's here. He's been here a lot. And then Daniels' music hit. That's what I thought was going to happen. But, he gives props to the Guns and then comes out to the ring. And this is when I started really getting into the show. I thought this was great. He comes out, doesn't waste a lot of time, gets the people excited. And you see where he's going with it. He's telling people, talking about complacency and, just being content doing whatever and betting on himself. And you feel like where it's going. He's going to say, hey, I'm here. And sure enough, he had said, I've signed a long-term contract with Impact Wrestling. This was great. And the reason I say it was great is because they obviously need the main event talent, and it's good for this. Impact needs to establish themselves as a place where people come to bet on themselves. And a lot of wrestlers are financially motivated. So like, hey, we're trying to get to WWE. We're trying to get to AEW. That doesn't mean there isn't money to be made in Impact if you're one of the bigger stars. Obviously, coming for a per date appearance compared to a full-time deal at AEW makes absolutely no sense. But if you're someone who can be in the main event scene, it's a good opportunity. The Gail Kims and the Mickey Jameses of the world, the Christian Cages of the world, EC3, come over, Drew Galloway, guys who come over, girls who come over and say, hey, I might make X amount of dollars there, but I can come here, still make a good living and be in the main event and get to do stuff and matter. Like, what was Frankie Kazarian doing at AEW? Absolutely nothing. And there's a lot of wrestlers there doing absolutely nothing, but they're going to stay because they're getting paid well. Frankie Kazarian's probably made his money in wrestling, and this was an opportunity for him to say, okay, my career's coming towards its end. I'm going to go do something. And now he can be a ambassador and someone, an ambassador for some people who are frustrated in AEW. And this is going to mean Impact has to, not Impact, but yeah, Impact and them have to open up the checkbooks and really bring some guys in. That's why, the Heaths and the Rhinos, I just don't see them. I think they're saying, let's get rid of these dudes. They've done their thing. Let's free up some money and establish themselves as, hey, come here, bet on yourself. And, this could be really, really big for the company if they can continue to get guys like that. But I'm sure Frankie Kazarian is very respected over at AEW. I'm sure he got along with a lot of people there. I'm sure a lot of people looked up to him. So I think some of the more veteran type of talents could follow him. These younger people who, they like the AEW style. I'm talking about the wrestlers themselves, the spots, the flips, the dives, all this shit, all the nonsensical shit. Like, they don't see anything wrong with what they're doing over there. But I would imagine there's a certain group of people who probably do, and they want more for themselves. and if Impact can give that opportunity, we might see the roster like really improve over this year, especially with people a little more hesitant to want to go over to WWE at this point because Vince is back, and obviously AEW's got so many people. There's a sweet spot there. Hey, you don't have to be part of this bloated roster. You can come over here. Now, the Action and Andretti's of the world, like the guys at AEW bring in of that nature, the per appearance guys, they're not going to choose Impact over AEW. They're just not. I say this all the time. Like they make double doing AEW Dark and what they do coming to do an Impact 8. So there's no benefit for those guys. But some of these mid card to top tier talents, who would qualify for a guaranteed contract from Impact, like a salary, there's some opportunity. So it was a much needed shot of adrenaline for the main event scene, and he's going to come and be a part of the show, and it looks like after he had that 40-minute match with Josh, that spoke to him, and that's when he asked to be released from AEW, and it was granted. So clearly that was a moment that meant something for him, and it's good that this happened on the Impact side this time, because last time when Morrissey went over to AEW, he went there and came back like, okay, I want to stay there, and that was always the problem with Impact sending AEW talents over there. I mean, sending their talents over to AEW. Now it happened the other way around, and he said, yeah, I got to come here and be somebody and do something. So we're going to see what it means for the company going forward. But I really think if they can establish themselves as a company, come here and bet on yourself. And, I'm talking a lot about this, but it's kind of like, let's just say in sports, NBA, Indiana Pacers. And I know this because I live close to them, so I follow them. They establish themselves as the free agents. Okay, we can't offer you the mountains. We can't offer you the ocean, the sunshine. And I love Indianapolis, by the way. But we can't offer all these things, but we can offer you the opportunity to come here and be the best basketball player you can be, because there's not those outside distractions. So for the people who are like, I don't care about the nightlife and these things, I want to come there and be the best player I can be, like, that's a great place to go. So that's where Impact has to establish themselves. Like, we can't offer you the bright lights literally because you're going to wrestle in the dark. We're not going to have a million people watching, but you can come here and be a part of something. And that's why I said the early days of TNA were so exciting and so successful, because people wanted to be a part of something, and we got into this place where it was with Impact that it was people were seeing it as a booking. Okay, I'm going to come there and I'm going to wrestle some dates, and I think we're now getting at a place again, especially if you watch that Hard to Kill like preview video, that 4-minute one they did. This really outlined it. I think we are in a place now where the majority of the roster is here to be somebody, to do something, and to do something special. But we were definitely in a place where for about a year, I think a lot of last year, and part of the previous year, where people were like, we're going to come, it's a booking, we're going to come here, we're going to work, we're going to get paid, don't really give a shit about anything else. Like, they were there for themselves, so I know I talked a lot about that, but I just think it's an exciting time for Impact to kick off the year and have something like that make the headlines, for someone to choose Impact. I keep saying the more people who choose them over other places, that's when they're going to really start making a name in free agency. Because right now people are like the Kingdom, content with going and getting the bullshit ROH deal, over wrestling at Impact. Like, we don't want that. We want people to want to be there. So then we got Moose and Joe Hendry after this. And this was a match that I, on paper, was like, I don't know how good it's going to be, because Joe Hendry doesn't really have that many good, serious matches. He's a great gimmick. He's funny. He's entertaining. And then Moose is everything. That dude is absolutely everything. So the match was, I thought, really over-delivered. And Moose has a history of over-delivering on pay-per-views. That is just what he does. He has that mindset. But I thought this was actually really good. I was more into it than I thought it was going to be. And this is once Kazarian came out, and then with this match here, this is when I started getting a little bit more into the pay-per-view, because as I said, The first couple matches weren't moving me, but this is when I started getting into it a little bit. And this was the match on the show where I'm like, I don't know who's gonna win, even though it's this bullshit means nothing title. I don't know who's gonna win because Moose really shouldn't take the L. Hendry just won the title. Um, it looks like they're gonna go somewhere with this and kind of keep it going because Moose wins the match by cheating, and then when he does, the director of authority steps out, Santino Marella, and shout out to James Campbell. He was the one that kind of brought this up in the Impact Lounge engagement group. And then the more I thought about it, he goes, "What if Santino's the dude?" Because people were talking about Eric Bischoff. I thought it was gonna be Dixie Carter at one point. The more I thought about it, it's like, you know what? I think that is it. I didn't think he was going to come out Santino Marella. I thought he was going to still come out with his normal name, but he came out as Santino. And I have to apologize because, to the listeners, because when the news came out that they trademarked Santino Marella, I was like, this isn't fucking news. And I kind of went on a rant where I was like, Impact needs to create some actual news, actual buzz. Like, who the hell cares? But now we see he's going to come out as this character. So, don't judge a book by its cover. I kind of jumped the gun on that a little bit. So I apologize for it, but dude, I think this is entertaining. Personally, I talk a lot about bad comedy in wrestling, and I don't like bad comedy, but I like people who are genuinely funny being funny. And he's someone who is genuinely funny. And he cut one joke that kind of was a fart in church. I don't remember exactly what it was, but for the rest of it, him talking to Moose was funny. And I think if they continue to have back and forth, him and Moose, I think it's going to be very entertaining going forward. And, we got Scott D'Amore written off the show for a while, which I think is really necessary. I think he's too involved on the show. I've always said he has a very annoying on-screen character. And I think this is a real change from that. I mean, this is because he tries to be funny and this, put someone in a match they don't want to be in and then walks away. Like it's just, I don't really care for all that. But because Santino is genuinely funny, I think this will actually be very interesting. And it's good to have an authority figure, I think, as long as they're not too big a part of the show. But him, I would enjoy being a bigger part of the show. But he restarts the match, and then Joe Hendry wins. So this is where it was a little shaky, but it allowed Moose to not look so weak because he did get a win, and then he lost. You know what I mean? So it was like a little controversial. It's whatever. It seems like every time Moose has his teammates in the crowd, they lose. Some of his teammates from the Falcons. It just seems like every time he's at a match and they're like, oh, here's some of his NFL teammates, he loses. So this is clearly a feud that's going to kind of keep going. But let's be honest, the digital media title is very beneath Moose. So we don't really want him walking around holding it, but we don't really like him losing at the same time. So I kind of get why they did what they did, and it was a way to get Santino out there. But I think he's going to be, kind of entertaining going forward. Then we get the Knockouts 4-way match after this. Killer Kelly, Taylor Wilde, Deonna Purrazzo, Masha Slamovich. Yo, this match was crazy. This was the one I was probably looking forward to the most on the card, and I think they really delivered. I just thought it was they just continue to establish the Knockouts as like the best division in women's wrestling. They just are. Maybe they lack some of the star power that the bigger companies have, but the star power doesn't mean anything ultimately when you're talking about the actual wrestling product. And this was the number one contenders match. I thought Deonna was the obvious choice here because she had storylines you could use with the other two, with Jordan and Mickey. But I really enjoyed this match. This was one like I would watch again. I don't really like Killer Kelly's ring gear is kind of weird, but I want to see more of the Taylor Wilde character. I want to see that grow a little bit more, and I'm a little worried about Deonna and what she does at this point. I don't want to see her go anywhere because I really think she's like the best. So we'll see. I will say once Masha won this, I thought it gave away the finish of the main event, because if Deonna wins, you don't know who the hell's gonna win, because they both have an issue with Deonna. You know, Masha wins, you're like, okay, they're not gonna do Masha versus Jordynne Grace 3 already, because they had a Bound for Glory, and then she came back and they did a last knockout standing for no reason whatsoever, and she loses. And then she loses to Taylor Wilde. And maybe that should have told us, okay, she lost 3 in a row. She's clearly going to win at the pay-per-view. And that's obviously what they were thinking. But man, I just thought Deonna should have been the pick here, because Deonna versus anyone is worth watching. It's even if you've already seen it a couple times, like, it's worth watching. And I'm not saying Masha's in that category, but I just really, really felt, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me, that they gave away the finish of the main event when Masha won. Because you're just like, there's absolutely no effing way that they're doing Jordynne Grace versus her again. And then, we'll talk about the knockouts main event here in a little bit. But, at that point, you're just like, they're clearly not going to do that. We just know they're not. But it was a really, really good match. The finish, which the snowplow, which I think is one of the worst finishers they have, the way she finished it doing the snowplow onto them was really, really freaking good. So I just enjoyed this. Speaking of enjoy, Steve Macklin versus Rich Swann, Falls Count Anywhere. You guys know I'm not big into the hardcore scene and all that, but I think this is my favorite Impact Wrestling match. I can't even compare something that I watched previously. No, I can't actually. My favorite match is actually Rich Swann versus Moose. This one, Falls Count Anywhere. This wasn't a goofy match with trash can lids and shit. Like, they started the match, backstage. A good portion of it happened. They went into the parking garage, on the streets, and it wasn't. So the only silly part was the car, because there was the guy sitting in it, like clearly acting. That looked really cheesy. But other than that, the match was just, the guys wrestled like they wanted to hurt each other, like they wanted to kill each other. And this really, Steve Macklin wins this thing. Rich Swann, by no stretch of the imagination, was made weak with this match. He got jumped while he's being interviewed with Gia Miller. Like, the match just started like that. I just thought it was really intense. And this really built Steve Macklin up. And we talk about, the good storytelling that Impact's able to pull off when they really want to. This match alone built him up so much to where he's going to be a legitimate, credible contender versus Josh Alexander here pretty soon. And I think he's going to beat him. I think he's going to take the belt off him. I think Steve Macklin has the ability to be the company's EC3. Obviously a very, very different gimmick, but to come to a place where he completely reinvents himself and you don't compare him to his WWE character, gimmick, name. Like, there's not even like, you can use Aaron Stevens, for instance. It doesn't matter if he's Aaron Stevens, Aaron Rex. It doesn't matter what. People are going to call him Damian Sandow no matter what you do. You know what I mean? Obviously, he had a much longer career than those guys there, did more important stuff. But Macklin was able to come over, completely reinvent himself. And we want to see this too. When I talked about being a place for guys to come bet on themselves, this falls into that category. But it's also for a certain wrestler to come and completely reinvent themselves. And, I really think, I said this to TW and he laughed at me, but I do think he has the ability to be the company's EC3. I don't know if he's going to get to that level of like popularity and everything, because it's such a different gimmick, but I think the world of him. I think the world of Steve Macklin, and obviously think the world of Rich Swann too. I got a shirt on. I love Rich Swann. I just thought this match was incredible. A lot of the reason that I don't like these hardcore matches that Impact does It's, there's obviously the ones like Sammy and Eric Young where, they almost kill each other, but then there's a lot of really silly ones too. And they do a lot of silly shit. But this was insanely entertaining. And I want to see what's next for Rich Swann too. You know, I don't think he's going to be in the world title picture because, losing a match like this, it's not like, okay, in Impact Plus, we're going to have 3-way between Rich Swann and, no. Macklin won this type of match versus him. That means Rich Swann has to go the end of the line. I don't want him to, but that's just the nature of it. That's what should happen. And we'll see how Rich Swann builds up from there. But they've established here this Josh Alexander, Steve Macklin main event. I hope it is for Rebellion. Because I believe they announced that's going to be in Toronto. That's where we wanted to see it. That's the last time Rebellion was good, in my opinion. When they did the match there. So or the show there, but don't do this on Impact Plus. Don't do it on an episode of Impact. Don't have 6-man tags where you guys are getting like really build this into something special because this can be a freaking hell of a main event. We got Eddie Edwards versus Jonathan Gresham. I didn't like it quite as much as the previous couple matches, but we knew that this match was going to be good. Eddie just continues to put on weight. He bent over at the very beginning when they're doing the introductions, and you just saw straight up gut. I don't. This is one of the kind of faces of the company, one of the big names, and I just don't. There's a couple dudes I just don't understand why they aren't in better shape for the company. Jonathan Gresham's in tremendous shape. Like this guy, he's going to put on some real bangers for Impact. I'm so happy to have him around. He can do the main event scene. He can do the X Division. I mean, there's so much that he'll be able to do. And I knew Eddie was going to win this because they're still doing this PCO thing. I know a lot of Impact fans like PCO. I'm not saying I dislike him, but I just don't have that much interest in him. And I definitely don't have interest in these two continuing to feud. For a second, I thought Eddie was going to step up and shake his hand because I do see the Eddie babyface turn coming eventually, because it was one thing with Honor No More, but as a heel by himself, I just don't think it works. I really thought Alicia was going to come down and help him win because, a couple of weeks ago, you have to beat Jonathan Gresham to put the past in the past, and I thought she was going to assist him and probably make that heel turn in the process. And if they can make the two of them heel as a couple, I think they can start doing something interesting. But that's not what they did. But Eddie wins the match, and it was a good match. Don't get me wrong, but PCO comes down at the end, and I'm just like, oh God, I don't want to see this. I will say, is one of my more negative comments, Eddie looked like a fucking idiot with his hair green like that. He just did. I don't understand as a heel coming out looking like that. That's why I was like, maybe he's going to turn back babyface or something, but I thought he looked ridiculous. Man, and I freaking love Eddie Edwards. When I'm saying he's out of shape, things like that, this is not a complete knock on him. Like, I really do like him. He's one of my favorites there, but I've just always seemed like I always feel like there's a next level he can take, and he always eventually gets there, but it takes forever. Every step of his career, like when he was transitioning from tag team to single, he was the world champion. People weren't buying him as the world champion. People weren't buying him as a singles wrestler. I mean, even until he lost the belt and well after that, no one did. But then we got to the point where we did, right? He could win the title now, or he has won the world title, and we can buy it. We can buy him as a singles guy. And then there was a time where we really need Eddie to advance his character, and that seemed like it took absolutely forever. And then the thing happened with Sami Callihan, and then he started advancing it. And then he got into that role, and we're like, okay, now we need him to take the next step. And it just, again, seemed to take like a year and a half for him to finally do it. Even the Honor No More storyline, where like he could be turning heel, like that storyline went on forever, and we were just waiting for it to happen. Then it finally happened, So it just seems like there's all these levels that he gets to. It just he just doesn't get there quickly, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But I know that him and PCO, they're gonna have some fucking street fight, some silly trash can lid, stable gun fight. And when that happens, I just want it to be over. Like, please, I just want it to be over. And then we get the main event of this thing. Mickie James versus Jordynne Grace. When they were building this on Twitter, I said this needs to be the main event. This is the real main event. And Impact saw that. They knew that this was the fucking main event. You cannot have put that Josh and Bully Ray match on last. I just don't think you could have. I don't think. Again, I got to watch that match again. Either I'm going to be proved wrong, or if you watch the match again, you're going to be proved wrong, because I don't know about that opener. But this match here, the Native American dancing. At first, they came out, I was like, "What is going on here?" I didn't really know Mickie James' background like that. But this was this match here, again, just cemented the knockouts as like, yo, this is the place to be for women's wrestling. This is an area where they can still continue to pound the pavement to the wrestling community and the wrestling, the female wrestlers out there. Like, this is where you can come shine. I didn't think Mickie James was going to lose this match, because I didn't think in the marketing and promotion the picture was painted strong enough that, hey, this wrestling legend, you might be seeing her for the last time. I just didn't get that. I really just saw her sticking around. The other thing I said in the preview is that if there is a 0.000000 repeating, of course, 1% chance that they can get Mickie versus Mercedes Monet, Mickey's going to win the title and they're not going to retire her, because that's one of the marquee matches you want to try to get out of her. I was fairly certain that was going to be the result. And Mickie James does end up winning, and she's a knockouts champion. And there was a great, the celebration for it at the end and everything. And I didn't know if someone was going to come out. I was kind of predicting, hey, Mercedes Monet could come out and challenge her, because they Impact likes to do that stuff, especially going off the air in the pay-per-view. But I'm glad nothing like that happened, because there was a real feel-good moment with this. And there was a real big fight feel with this. There really was, like, one that I don't think would have been there with Josh and Bully in the main event. But there was a big fight feel. And they do a good job of that for the most part with the main events on the pay-per-views. So just tremendous knockouts match, guys. I know you guys love this. I thought the finish at the end with like the tornado DDT was a little like, I really thought Jordynne Grace was going to kick out of that. But, Mickie James' finisher is a DDT, which I've not hid my feelings on it. I think it looks like shit every time she does it. That Mick DDT, whatever it's called, Mick DT, whatever the hell. But it always looks like horse shit to me. So I guess because she was doing it off the turnbuckle, like that was the finish. But I don't know. I thought it was like, I just thought it was a little flat. But it was just a really good match here where Jordynne Grace doesn't lose any kind of momentum, whatever. Like, she's a fucking star, who they have to keep around forever, in my opinion. Like, they cannot let her go anywhere, because you can't replace someone like that. Excuse me. There was a guy when Mickie won the match, real tall, older guy. I don't know if it was her stepdad, because there was an older lady, which I believe was her mom, her kid, and two older guys. And she seemed to like snub him on purpose at the end. I don't know if you guys caught this, like when he tried to hug her. And then when they got in the ring, and then he was like trying to talk to her, and she looked like she was ignoring him. And then when they got in the ring, and she was hugging everyone, he gave her a hug, and it lasted like half a second, and she pushed off him. So if you guys got it recorded, you should go back and watch that. Obviously, if you watch it on Fight, you could probably still watch it. But I just thought it was funny, and I don't know if I was over. It was something. Here's Spooky the cat. He likes to stand on my shoulder. like a parrot, because when he was a kitten, I used to walk around with him standing on my shoulder. Now he's licking my head. And now that he's a big cat, he thinks he can still do that. So he likes to just chill here. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of a funny part of the show there. So lots of opportunities for Mickey now to complete, wrestle some of the knockouts that she didn't wrestle previously. Because I was saying in this last rodeo, I was like, she didn't wrestle Taya and Rosemary and Alicia, and like there's half the roster she didn't wrestle. So maybe that was done by design, because now that she's a champion, they got to give her some fresh matches. But that's also what makes me think the Mercedes match is possible, because there's not a lot of fresh matches for Mickey at this point, unless they bring in some new girls. So, I don't know. But I'm really happy she's sticking around. We don't want Mickey to retire yet. And it's good to see Mickey on a weekly basis, part of Impact. When she was first coming, kind of showing up, doing the NWA thing, I think she saw ultimately, obviously, Nick is not with NWA anymore. They kind of had that falling out a little bit after Empower. But, I think she also saw, like, not many people are watching NWA over here. So Impact's the place for me to be. And we want her to be around as long as possible. We want this last rodeo to end. And I also thought when she eventually drops the title, it's really going to elevate somebody. And Masha might be that person, but Masha's the next opponent. We don't want Masha to lose. So does it just mean that Mickey's going to go down at Rebellion? I don't know, man. I really see Mickey holding it to like Slammiversary or Bound for Glory. Like there's no way that she's not going to drop it. She's not going to lose her career to B-level pay-per-view for Impact at like Rebellion or Hard to Kill. That just wasn't going to happen. I just think it has to be Slammiversary or Bound for Glory. It's not going to happen on an episode of Impact. It's not going to happen on Impact Plus, So if she can just get through Rebellion, then we know we're going to have her like for the long haul as the champion for 2023. And that's it for me, guys. I am your boy BQ. Really good pay-per-view with Hard to Kill. And we're going to see when this episode of Impact happens. Are they is this going to be a new era? Is the, they didn't do it for the new year, but is the intro going to be a little different? Are they going to add some kind of new angles or colors or something to just make the show feel different? I assume no, but hopefully they do. So for Spooky the Cat, I'm your boy BQ. We are out. Peace.